Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Emily or La Movie Mija. I'm a part-time filmmaker, full-time movie lover, and today we're going to talk about Aileen and Romulus. First and foremost, thank you so much for checking out my channel. I am a part-time filmmaker, like I mentioned, and I have such an appreciation for movies. I try my best to celebrate all the things there are to celebrate about movies, good and bad, and everything in between. And I'm just looking to build more spaces for community online. There is no shortage of movie reviewers out there, so I appreciate you giving my channel a chance. And if you like spending time with me and hearing my thoughts on movies, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more reviews from me. Now let's get into Aileen and Romulus. While scavenging the deep ends of a derelict space station, a group of young space colonizers come face to face with the most terrifying life form in the universe. The film is directed by Fede Alvarez, starring Cailee, Spaeny, David Jonsson, Archie, Renaux, Isabela, Merced, Aileen and Fearn. Okay, the first part of this video is going to be spoiler free. I'm just going to give you some of my instant reactions and overall thoughts, and then in the latter half we'll get into some nitty-gritty spoilers. Okay, what I'm about to say is going to require some cognitive dissonance from you because it definitely required something from me. It was challenging for me to even figure out how I got to this conclusion about this movie. But Aileen and Romulus is the greatest just okay movie I've ever seen. I had a lot of feelings exiting that theater, and it took me a minute and maybe a couple of cocktails to come to this conclusion. And you might be thinking that this is going to lead into me detracting you from going to see it in the theaters. However, quite the opposite. I think that you should watch this in theaters if possible, in IMAX if you can. Biggest screen, best sound that you can find. Watch this movie on that format. Not for the story or the lore, because personally I think that all of that was just a lot of baggage and poorly executed, but for the fact that I think the environmental achievements of this film put this up there with some of the greatest visual depictions of space ever committed to film. Like, whatever your list of greatest depictions of space in film, feel free to comment below what you think those movies are. I think that this movie could possibly contend to be in that upper echelon of best space movies, visually speaking. It is a visual feast for both fans of the Aliens franchise as well as like anyone who just appreciates a good sci-fi movie set in space. Visually, it's immaculate. The production design went above and beyond to utilize the same visual language that we know from the original movies, and that includes the homages to character costumes and the practical monsters that they used. Adding to that experience is the sound design and the score. The sound design is just so crunchy and immersive. Like, it's so tactile, like you could feel it. Like, it gave me goosebumps, like just hearing the different ways that things can squish. And the score, it's like so haunting and dramatic, mixing influences of the past film scores with the Benjamin Wallfish's own vision for the music. It is just so well done. And there is a standout performance in this film that deserves all the praise. It's far and beyond the most interesting depiction of a character in this film, and that is the role that is performed by David Jonsson as Andy. At this point, you might be thinking, wow, Emily, seems like you really like this movie. Where did it go wrong? Why is it just okay? Okay, I hope that the people with thin skin have left the comments. Are you gone? Okay, good. While this movie could have been an immaculate space horror extravaganza, it gets bogged down in the middle acts by the scariest threat to modern movies: exposition dump. Exposition dump. There are a couple of egregious exposition dumps that are so perfunctory, and they really just zooted me out of this film. Took me all the way out. Like, I missed important plot points of this movie because I was gone. This movie is canonically set to take place in between Alien, the first film, and Aliens, the second film, with connections to a handful of other films in the timeline. I don't want to say too much without giving anything away. And this movie is just burdened with the pressure to connect everything. And it's a palatable difference between the movie Alvarez could have made and the movie he ended up making. There's a difference in the acts that you'll see. There is a fourth act that takes place that feels unique to the rest of the film. It feels uniquely Fede Alvarez coded, and at that point I just wish we could have had more of whatever that fourth act was. However, the director doesn't have an issue with the limitations the studio put on him to to connect all of this lore. In an interview with the LA Times, he said, "None of cinema's masterpieces were made under total creative freedom. Not the original Alien, nor The Godfather." Those are quite the name drops, I'll say. With such an open mind about limitations, maybe you don't have to be as pressed as I am about remakes and requels and their infectious ability to ruin a good thing. I think alien heads, if that's what they call themselves, or sci-fi space fans in general, they would definitely benefit from watching this movie in theaters, in IMAX if you can. It's a spectacle to behold and truly one of the best interpretations of space on screen, I think. All right, from here on out, I'm talking spoilers. I want to dig into a little bit more of the details, and I don't think that you can do that without giving too much away. So again, if you haven't seen the movie, let's get into it. I want to start with what I liked because there was a whole lot of things I actually enjoyed and admired about this movie. I was in awe of the production design, the visual elements that displayed a clear affinity for the original film. As a movie that's an entry into a well-beloved franchise, I think that is really important, and I appreciate the dedication to recreate these sets and having these real environments that the actors could interact with. I think that really elevates their performances. Everything felt so real because it was. Not only do we get the same tactile nature within the production design aboard the Romulus and Remus space stations, we also get that real tactile feel with the monsters and their designs as well. The face huggers and the xenomorphs, they just looked so terrifying and disgusting, and the way that they move just gives me the heebie-jeebies. I know in my head that they are just little puppets just vibrating around the place, but still, I do not want it near me. There's a distinct color palette in the lighting throughout the film that is reminiscent of Alvarez's past works, and it fits seamlessly into the cold and harrowing space environment. There's lots of oranges and blues that really just pull everything together in a very exquisite way. There are some sequences in this movie that are just so imaginative and incredible and feel like I'm playing a video game. That kind of imagination where you're just like, wow, this just went off the rails. And that one that really calls to me was the one that involves zero gravity and the alien acid blood just floating around and trying to avoid that obstacle that it creates. I think that is definitely another reason that I'm gonna have on my list of reasons to never volunteer on a mission to space. What would they need with a girl who eats too much and constantly makes pop cultural references? I don't know, but I do make one killer margarita. But I digress. The movie is downright gorgeous. Beautiful. Loved it. Stunning. Even the attention to detail in the costume design was mwah. Those chunky Reeboks that Cailee Spaeny's Rain wears, they got their own iconic moment. I loved that. The jerk guy, Bjorn, even his red headband was a nod to Vasquez from Aliens. And personally, I need Isabela Merced's hair care routine, because those curls, even when they got covered in blood and guts, and she went through the most in this movie, her hair still looked good. I want to know how she got the curls to look that way. But let's talk a little bit more seriously about the characters themselves, because this is probably my biggest point of dissatisfaction with the film. I did not enjoy the writing of this film in particular, but when I was trying to pinpoint or put my finger on what it was I didn't really enjoy about it, I realized I did appreciate the simplicity of the story. Essentially, we have these downtrodden, indentured servants who are aching to forge their own way on a new planet to start a new life where they can actually feel the sun. There's a lot there. It's very rich. That's a banging setup, one that is simultaneously simple but rife with opportunity to explore themes of found family, friendship, loyalty, psychological fear, trauma, heartbreak, and hope. Instead, however, we end up with some pretty flat characters and a very predictable story sequence. In that way, it felt like this movie was not successful as a horror movie because it diffuses a lot of the tension when I feel like I already know what's going to happen to all these characters and the order in which it's going to happen. A lot of the suspense fuel that we could have relied on in this movie to build up more tension is just wasted. And instead we have all of these bodies to merely beef up the kill count. That is maybe a point of contention that comes down to personal taste, but I just enjoy a big action set piece more with a little emotional weight to it. Sure, we have some pretty promising moments in the beginning, that foundational central relationship between Rain and Andy. I like how they set up the tension and betrayal between them, and when it's discovered that as a synthetic or artificial person, Andy wouldn't be allowed where Rain is planning to take them. That is a cool dynamic seed planted between them, and I appreciate how Alvarez consistently goes back to sibling relationships in his work. And then you have Andy's dad jokes that are programmed into him by her late father, and that was a really beautiful touch. much. But as interesting as I thought Andy was, and as incredible as his portrayal is by David Jonsson, the character of Rain, our leading lady, it didn't have much to offer back. She is not my preferred final girl. Her character is just so reluctant from the get, and she never has any special skills that come to play. I feel like the driving force in her casting was to give us a visual homage to Sigourney Weaver once she starts shooting. But other than that, I didn't feel like there was a lot to her character. Like, she was definitely defeated in the beginning when she was denied removal from the planet to travel elsewhere, and her indentured servitude like doubled in years. And I never felt like there was a fire lit under her to help others, to do more. And I don't know if that's just me. I don't know if that's a result of the exposition dump in the middle of the film really taking the wind out of my sails throughout the story, but I just felt she didn't have enough to do as a character to like overcome something, you know? In the periphery, we've got Bjorn. Also, side note, I don't remember all of their names. I had to look them up on IMDb, so don't worry. If you watch this movie and you're like, who's she talking about? I had to look these people up. Bjorn was a walking like alert of predictability. He's your run-of-the-mill jerk whose carelessness and bad decisions jumpstart a whole bunch of bad things for the crew. And yes, we get a bit of backstory with him and his adversity towards Andy because, you know, his mom was killed off by a synthetic person, but he was still boring. He was someone I was excited to see get killed off, so maybe that was his purpose. Then we have Tyler. What do we know about Tyler? We know he learned about guns playing video games and he cares for his sister, but I couldn't really describe his personality or defining characteristics to you. Navarro had a cool look and some interesting mannerisms. We see her praying when they first depart from the labor planet, and that was a cool character detail. She also has the nastiest, most painful like chest eruption on screen, so that made her a little more iconic. Kay being pregnant but still being the person who goes through the most violence was rough. I liked that there is that thematic connective tissue between this and the original Alien film, where they explore the allegory of body autonomy and parasitic relationships. You can kind of view pregnancy as a sort of parasitic relationship in a negative way, and Kay meets her demise at the hands of her own alien human hybrid, ghastly, freaky, deaky looking thing in the ultimate stunner. That was a stunner of a scene. That fourth act where we just escalate into something else altogether. Whew, that got me so excited. The last character I need to acknowledge is Rook, the synthetic crew member from the OG film. Okay, in a movie where there is flawless, I'm talking flawless visuals everywhere else, Weta, ILM, I see you in there. It is such a shame that the deepfake technology they used to revive this character was so bad. And we saw so much of him. I thought, okay, he's gonna be here for a cameo and that's great. That's awesome. Like, he looks a little wonky, but he's not going to stay the whole time. 2 hours later, he was there the whole time. It took me so far out of the movie, along with the exposition dumps. I missed those critical points. I had to ask my boyfriend later what was up with those vials and the escape plan, and he explained to me some really critical things that I missed because I was so zonked because of Rook's PS1 rendered face. I feel like there was other creative ways they could have gone about depicting him instead of just relying on this deepfake technology. Again, I'm a fan of recasting. Give another actor some work. Bring another alien character back. I don't know. Like, I just felt like that was just a really poor decision, and we saw so much of him that it really did take away from the other stellar visual elements of this movie. Now is a weird time to admit that I have not seen any other Alien movies besides the original Alien. And I'm confiding in you because I think my experience watching this movie is still valid. I don't have the other lore and touch points to support this film, and without those, I think this movie is still so visually stunning, with a fourth act that just accelerates it into legendary mode. Like, once they were assumed to be safe on the ship, autopiloting it to their intended planet, things went to an 11, and I was internally screaming because that was the kind of claustrophobic, high stakes, quick action, unpredictable mayhem I wanted more of. On paper, this is a very rote haunted house story. Like, characters go somewhere they shouldn't be and bad things happen because of their immaturity and lack of forethought. Who would have known? I think that you can have a simple setup like that, but I think that what makes those deaths so hard to watch, what makes you want to root for those characters to survive, and what makes you so invested as an audience member in a horror movie where there is life and death stakes like this, is your investment in the characters. And if you're not giving us anything about these characters besides the fact that they're young and kind of crazy and want to escape this planet, there was nothing for me to hang on to. I think this movie was relying a lot on the lore of the past films to keep audiences engaged, and that only works for a fragment of the people who are going to see this movie. I think that you can have a wonderful standalone film that doesn't always need to rely on someone's extensive knowledge of past films. I think Rogue One did it really well. I think Dr. Sleep did it really well, but this movie, story-wise, just didn't execute on that front for me. And what Alvarez is able to accomplish visually with immersive set and sound design, pristine lighting, and cinematography is simultaneously a precious gift and a slap in the face. When you realize how ironically, how much the corporate schlock ruined what we could have had. At the end of the day, I think that this is a awesome, okay movie. I think in the echelon of movies that are just okay, I definitely wouldn't say that this is a bad movie. I wouldn't say it's a great movie. I think there was more missed opportunities than anything, and the story itself just felt very by the numbers, super predictable, and that matters in a horror thriller movie when you are relying on your audience not being able to predict what happens next. I love when a horror movie subverts my expectations and leads me somewhere we haven't been before. But this is very much somewhere we've been before, and if the fourth act of this movie is any indication, there was definitely places we could have gone that we've never been before, and we could have had an incredible time with this movie instead of just an okay one. Let me know if you end up watching Alien Romulus. I want to know your thoughts on this film and where you think it stacks up in the rest of the franchise. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.